The auctioneer's gavel cracked like thunder against the wooden block as Silas Cordwain raised his weathered hand one final time. $200, he bellowed, over the jeering crowd gathered in Dusty Creek's town square. The laughter died. Instantly, moments before, the same men had been cackling like hyenas as Mayor Brixton offered up the captured Apache woman for a measly $50. Payment for her crimes against decent folk. Her dark eyes blazed with defiance, despite the rope burns around her wrists and the blood seeping through her buckskin dress where a settler's bullet had grazed her shoulder. "You gone loco, Cordwain?" spat Jeremiah Hacksaw, the town's self-appointed moral authority. That savage ain't worth 2 bits, let alone 200. Silas stepped forward, his spurs jingling against the dusty ground. At 6'3", with shoulders broad as a barn door, he commanded attention even without speaking. His steel-gray eyes never left the woman's face as he counted out crisp bills from his leather pouch, more money than most of these fools saw. "In a year, Ayanna Nightwind," he said quietly, using her real name instead of the degrading titles the townspeople hurled at her. She flinched at hearing her Apache name spoken with such reverence by a white man. The crowd stirred uneasily. How did this drifter cowboy know her identity? Mayor Brixton's greedy eyes widened as Silas placed the money in his trembling palms. "Well, that is to say, sold to Mr. Cordwain. This is madness," shrieked Mrs. Prudence Whitlock, clutching her pearl necklace. "A decent Christian man don't consort with heathen squaws." Silas's jaw tightened. In one fluid motion, he drew his Colt .45 and fired a shot into the air. The crowd scattered like startled chickens, leaving only the essential players in this bizarre drama. "Anyone got objections to how I spend my money?" he drawled, holstering the weapon. "Can take it up with my peacemaker here." Ayanna studied this strange cowboy with suspicious eyes. His sun-weathered face bore old scars, and his hands, gentle as they cut her bonds, told stories of hard living. Most puzzling of all, he spoke fragments of Apache under his breath, words of comfort she hadn't heard since her village was destroyed. "Why?" she whispered in English, rubbing her freed wrists. Instead of answering, Silas removed his dusty hat and placed it over her wounded shoulder. "'Cause some prices ain't about money, ma'am. Some are about what's right." As they walked toward his horse, neither noticed the figure watching from the shadows of the general store man. His own dark past was about to collide with their uncertain future. 3 days later, Ayanna sat by the creek behind Silas's modest cabin, carefully stitching beadwork while her shoulder healed. The cowboy had been nothing but respectful, sleeping in the barn while she recovered in his simple home. Yet questions burned in her mind like prairie fire. "You speak my language," she said as he approached with fresh bandages. "Where did you learn?" Silas settled beside her, maintaining careful distance. "Lived with the Chiricahua for 2 years. After the war, I was ... lost. Your people found me half dead in the desert. The war between the whites." He nodded grimly. "Gettysburg? Lost my whole unit, my brother Micah among them. Came west to die. Figured the desert would finish what the Confederates started." Ayanna's hands stilled on her beadwork. "But you lived." "An old medicine man named Taze pulled me back from the spirit world, said I had unfinished business." Silas's eyes grew distant. "Never knew what he meant until I saw you on that auction block." "And what business is that?" Before he could answer, hoofbeats thundered up the trail. 5 riders approached at full gallop, led by a man Ayanna recognized with dread Colonel Vance Murdoch, the same officer who had ordered the massacre of her village. Well, Cordwain," Murdoch called out, dismounting with theatrical flourish. "Heard you bought yourself an Apache pet? Army's offering a $50 bounty for this particular squash. Killed 3 of my men during a raid." "Those men were burning children alive," Ayanna spat. Rising to her feet despite her injury, Murdoch's pale eyes glittered with malice. "All the more reason to hang her proper-like." Silas stepped protectively in front of Ayanna. "She's under my protection now, Colonel. Bought and paid for. Legal as Sunday church." "Legal don't make it right," Murdoch sneered. "Stand aside, cowboy. This here's military business." "The war's over, Murdoch. You've got no authority here." "I got 5 armed men says different." The tension crackled like electricity before a storm. Silas's hand hovered near his gun, but Ayanna placed a gentle touch on his arm. In that moment, she saw something in his eyes that made her heart skip the same look her father once gave her mother, fierce and protective and utterly devoted. "There will be another way," she whispered in Apache. Murdoch barked a harsh laugh. "Touch and scene, but time's up. Boys, take the squaw." As the soldiers advanced, Silas smiled grimly. "Funny thing about legal documents, Colonel. Turns out I didn't just buy her freedom, I married her too. Judge Thornberry made it official yesterday." He produced a marriage certificate from his vest pocket, the ink still fresh. Ayanna gasped. "When had he?" "A white man married to an Apache." Murdoch scoffed. "That ain't legal nowhere in this territory. Federal law says different since the 14th Amendment." Silas replied calmly. "My wife's under the protection of the United States Constitution now. You harm her, you're attacking an American citizen." The marriage certificate trembled in Colonel Murdoch's gloved hands as he studied the official seals and signatures. Judge Thornberry was known for his meticulous legal work. There would be no disputing this document in any court. "This is a sham marriage," Murdoch snarled, but uncertainty crept into his voice. No decent judge would judge Thornberry's daughter. "Married a Cherokee man last spring," Silas interrupted smoothly. "He's got strong feelings about love crossing color lines. Said it reminded him of his own grandparents, Irish and German, back when that was scandalous too." Ayanna stared at Silas in amazement. The marriage was real, but when had he arranged it? Why hadn't he told her? "Don't matter none," growled Sergeant Mills, one of Murdoch's men. "Apache squaw killed white soldiers. That's a hanging offense, marriage or no marriage." "Actually," came a new voice from behind them, "it matters quite a lot." Everyone turned to see Judge Thornberry himself riding up the trail, accompanied by Sheriff Dawson and 2 federal marshals. The elderly judge's white beard couldn't hide his satisfied smile. "Your Honor," Murdoch straightened, clearly caught off guard. "What brings you out here?" "Heard there might be trouble regarding one of my recent legal proceedings," Thornberry replied, dismounting with surprising agility for his 70 years. "Thought I should observe personally." "This woman is a murderer," Murdoch pressed. "Military justice has no jurisdiction over civilian crimes," Judge Thornberry finished. "Mrs. Cordwin," he nodded respectfully to Ayanna, "stands accused of killing soldiers during what your own reports describe as a punitive raid against a peaceful Apache encampment. However, new testimony has emerged." He gestured to the federal marshals, who stepped forward with official documents. "3 survivors from that raid have come forward," Marshal Hendricks announced. 8 white traders who were in the Apache camp, conducting legitimate business. Their sworn statements describe soldiers opening fire on women and children without provocation. Mrs. Cordwain's actions were in defense of innocence. Ayanna felt the ground shift beneath her feet. After months of being hunted as a criminal, she was suddenly innocent? Free? "Furthermore," Judge Thornberry continued, "Colonel Murdoch, you've been relieved of command pending investigation into unauthorized military actions against peaceful native tribes. These gentlemen are here to escort you back to Fort Huachuca." Murdoch's face turned purple with rage. "This is impossible." "I have orders." "Had orders," Marshal Hendricks corrected, producing arrest warrants. Past tense. As the marshals took Murdoch and his men into custody, Ayanna finally found her voice. "The marriage," she whispered to Silas. "When? Why?" Silas removed his hat, running nervous fingers through his dark hair. "Yesterday morning, while you were sleeping, Judge Thornberry owed me a favor. I saved his grandson from rustlers last month." "But Ayanna," he took her hands gently. "I know it ain't how these things are supposed to happen, if you want it annuled." She silenced him by placing 2 fingers against his lips. "In Apache tradition," she said softly, "when a warrior claims a woman as his own, she has the right to test his heart, to see if his courage in battle matches his tenderness in love." And her dark eyes sparkled with something that might have been mischief. "I think this Apache woman would like to test her cowboy husband's heart." 2 weeks passed in careful courtship, despite their legal marriage. Silas continued sleeping in the barn, respecting Apache customs. Ayanna explained about the proper time for a husband and wife to truly come together. During the days they worked side by side, he teaching her to rope cattle, she showing him how to track game through forests that seemed empty to his untrained eyes. "Your people have a saying," Ayanna said one evening as they sat by the fire, "about the heart wanting what it wants." "Something like that," Silas agreed, whittling a piece of cedar. "Why? My heart is confused. For 3 years since my village was destroyed, I have carried only anger, hatred for all white faces. But you!" She touched his scarred knuckles. "You make me remember what it felt like before the killing started." Silas set down his carving a small horse, beautifully detailed. What did it feel like? Safe? Happy? Like the future held good things instead of just survival. That night, she didn't send him to the barn, but their peace was shattered at dawn by frantic knocking. Silas opened the door to find young Timothy Fletcher, the blacksmith's apprentice, his face pale with terror. "Mr. Cordwain, come quick. There's trouble in town, bad trouble." As they rode hard toward Dusty Creek, Timothy explained between gasps, "After you married, the wedding news got around. Folks got real riled up. Mrs. Whitlock's been holding meetings, saying it ain't Christian for a white man to marry a savage. Last night they formed a committee." "What kind of committee?" Ayanna asked, though she already knew. "The kind that rides at night wearing sheets, ma'am? They're planning to burn your cabin tonight, and worse. Sheriff Dawson tried to stop them, but he's just one man against 20. Silas's jaw hardened. "Who's leading this committee?" "Jeremiah Hacksaw is doing the talking, but word is someone else is pulling the strings. Someone with money and influence." As they crested the hill overlooking Dusty Creek, they saw smoke rising from the town square. But it wasn't a building burning, it was an effigy, a crude dummy dressed in buckskin and hung from the old oak tree. "They're sending a message," Ayanna said quietly. "Then it's time I sent one back," Silas replied. They rode straight down Main Street, heads high, as townsfolk scattered or stared from behind curtains. At the square, Silas dismounted and walked directly to the burning effigy. With one smooth motion, he drew his knife and cut it down, stomping out the flames. "Anyone got something to say?" he called out in a voice that carried to every corner. "Of the square, say it to my face." Jeremiah Hacksaw stepped out from behind the general store, flanked by a dozen men. "You've brought shame on this town, Cordwain. Decent folks won't stand for it." "Decent folks," Silas repeated slowly.
Nice.
"Like the kind who burn children alive? That savage woman murdered 3 soldiers. She defended innocents from a massacre. Federal court cleared her of all charges. But I reckon you boys don't much care about legal proceedings when there's hate to spread. There's right and wrong," Hacksaw shouted. God-fearing people know the difference. Ayanna had heard enough. She dismounted and walked to stand beside her husband. "Your God," she said clearly, "teaches love for enemies, does he not? Forgiveness. Or do white Christians only preach such things when it's convenient?" The crowd stirred uneasily. Several women nodded, their faces troubled. "She's got a point," Jeremiah called out, old Pete Morrison from the hardware store. "My own daughter married that Irish boy last year. Folks said that wasn't right either." "This is different," Hacksaw insisted, but his support was wavering. "How?" Ayanna challenged. "Because my skin is different. Because I pray to spirits instead of your wooden cross. Or because I fought back when soldiers tried to murder my family." The confrontation in the square was interrupted by the arrival of an elegant black carriage, its polished surface gleaming despite the dust of travel. The crowd parted as a well-dressed man stepped down, tall, silver-haired, with the bearing of wealth and authority. "Daddy," gasped Mrs. Whitlock, her earlier bluster evaporating. "What are you doing here?" Silas felt, Ayanna tense beside him. This was Randolph Whitlock, one of the richest men in the territory. Owner of 3 silver mines and half the railroad contracts between here and California. His daughter Prudence had married the local banker and considered herself the moral authority of Dusty Creek. "I came," Whitlock said in a cultured voice, "because my daughter's telegrams suggested this town had lost its collective mind." His pale eyes swept the crowd before settling on Silas and Ayanna. "To Cordwain, Mrs. Cordwain, An honor to meet you both." "Daddy!" Prudence shrieked. "You can't possibly approve of this abomination." Whitlock turned to his daughter with cold displeasure. "Prudence, your mother and I clearly failed in teaching you basic Christian charity. This young woman was declared innocent by federal court. Mr. Cordwain is a decorated war veteran who served this country with honor. Their marriage is legal, binding, and frankly none of your business." The crowd murmured in shock. If Randolph Whitlock supported the marriage, their mob mentality was crumbling fast. But Sir Jeremiah Hacksaw stammered, "Surely you understand the implications of mixing races." Whitlock's laugh was sharp as winter wind. "Hacksaw, your grandmother was half Mexican, which you conveniently forget when it suits you. Half this town has mixed blood if you trace back far enough. The difference is, Mrs. Cordwain has the courage to live her truth openly." He walked directly to Ayanna and removed his hat. "Ma'am, I've heard about your skill with horses. I'm in need of someone who can train my thoroughbreds for the racing season. The position pays $200 a month, plus housing for you and your husband." Ayanna blinked in amazement. You would hire me?" "I hire the best talent available, regardless of ancestry." "Your reputation with horses traveled clear to San Francisco." Whitlock smiled. "Though I suspect your husband might prefer to continue his current work. I hear you've been quite successful with that small cattle ranch." "How did you, Silas, begin?" "I make it my business to know about good investments. Your land borders my northern pastures. I've been hoping to buy it for years, but after seeing your work, I'd rather propose a partnership. Whitlock Cordwain Cattle Company has a nice ring, don't you think?" The job offers hung in the air like morning mist, beautiful and almost too good to believe. But Ayanna sensed something deeper in the old man's eyes. "Shh. Why?" she asked quietly. "Why do you really help us?" Whitlock was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried old pain. 40 years ago, I fell in love with a Navajo woman named Silver Moon. My father forbade the marriage, threatened to disinherit me if I disgraced the family name. I was young, weak, more concerned with money than love. One chose my inheritance over her." His eyes grew distant. "She died in the winter of 1847, along with hundreds of others on the long walk. I never forgave myself for being too cowardly to stand by her. When I heard about your marriage, Mr. Cordwain, I saw the man I should have been." Ayanna reached out and touched his weathered hand. "She would have been proud of the man you became." "Would she?" Whitlock asked. "I suppose we'll never know. I can honor her memory by making sure love wins this time." Jeremiah Hacksaw spat in the dust. "Pretty words don't change facts. Mixed marriages bring nothing but trouble." "Then it's fortunate," came a new voice, "that this isn't your decision to make." Everyone turned to see Sheriff Dawson approaching. With a telegram in his hand, "Just got word from the territorial governor. Any person or group interfering with the Cordwain's legal marriage will face federal charges. That includes intimidation, property damage, or public disturbances." Mob's remaining resolve crumbled entirely. One by one, the would-be vigilantes slipped away until only the core troublemakers remained. "This ain't over," Hacksaw muttered. "Yes," Silas said quietly, "it is." The Whitlock's job offer changed everything. Within a month, Silas and Ayanna had moved to a beautiful house on the edge of Whitlock's sprawling ranch, where she could work with the thoroughbreds while he managed an expanding cattle operation. Their partnership, both business and personal, flourished like wildflowers after rain. But success brought new challenges. "The horses trust you like you're one of them," Silas marveled one evening, watching Ayanna work with a particularly spirited stallion named Thunder. "Apache children learn to speak with horses before they can walk properly," she replied, running her hands along the animal's neck. "Your people see them as tools. Mine see them as family." "Your people," Silas repeated thoughtfully. "Do you ever regret leaving that world behind?" Ayanna paused in her grooming. It was a question that haunted her quiet moments. "I didn't leave it behind. I carry it forward into something new." She looked at him seriously. "Do you regret the choice? Taking on a wife who will never fit into white society completely?" Instead of answering immediately, Silas walked to the fence rail where he'd been reading a letter. "It's got news from back east today. My sister Helena wants to meet my wife, see our new life. And you're worried, Helena's? Particular about social propriety? She married well, moves in Boston society circles. When she finds out you're Apache. ... She'll be horrified. Ayanna finished matter-of-factly. When does she arrive? Next month. But Ayanna, if you'd rather not, I am your wife, she interrupted. Firmly. If your family wishes to know you, they must know me. The question is whether you're prepared to defend that truth. Her words proved prophetic. Helena Cordwain Morrison arrived in September with enough luggage for a royal expedition and an attitude to match. Elegant and sharp-tongued. She took one look at Ayanna and barely concealed her shock. Silas, she said during their first dinner. When you wrote about your wife, you failed to mention certain ... details. Such as, he replied mildly, though Ayanna could see his jaw tightening. Well, her heritage, for one thing. Really, brother, what were you thinking? Ayanna set down her fork carefully. Perhaps you should ask what he was thinking, Mrs. Morrison. I am perfectly capable of speaking for myself. Helena's eyebrows rose. I'm sure you are, dear. It's just that in proper society, your proper society massacred my village and left me for dead, Ayanna said quietly. I find its standards somewhat suspect. The dinner table fell silent. Helena looked to her brother for support, but found none. Ayanna survived what would have destroyed most people, Silas said evenly. She's built a successful business, speaks 4 languages, has more natural grace than any Boston socialite I've met. If that doesn't meet your definition of proper, then perhaps your definitions need adjustment. Helena's face flushed. I came here hoping to find you happy, but I see you've simply gone native, like some wild mountain man. No, Ayanna interjected. Rising from the table, he has learned what it means to judge people by their hearts instead of their bloodlines. Something your proper society might consider adopting. She left the room with quiet dignity, but Silas could hear her crying softly in their bedroom later that night. I'm sorry, he whispered, holding her close. Means well, but she's lived in a small world her whole life. She's your family, Ayanna replied. I don't want to be the reason you lose that. You're my family now too, the most important part. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Helena, despite her initial prejudices, began to see what her brother saw in his wife. She watched Ayanna's gentleness with the horses, her skill in managing the ranch books, her quiet strength in dealing with the occasional hostile visitor to town. The turning point came when Helena fell ill with fever. While the local doctor prescribed bed rest and bitter medicines, Ayanna quietly prepared traditional Apache remedies, willow bark tea, sage smoke, and healing songs her grandmother had taught her. Why, Helena asked weakly as Ayanna tended to her. After how I treated you, why help me? Because you are my husband's sister, Ayanna replied simply. That makes you family. Helena recovered within days, much to the doctor's amazement. Before leaving for Boston, she took Ayanna aside for a private conversation. I owe you an apology, she said, her usual haughtiness replaced by genuine humility. I came here with my mind already made up, ready to disapprove of everything.
Thanks.
But you've shown me kindness I didn't deserve. You showed me something too, Ayanna replied. That love can change even the most closed hearts, given time and patience. Will you ... will you write to me? I'd like to know how you're doing, learn more about your world. It was the beginning of an unlikely friendship that would last decades. 5 years later, the Cordwain Ranch had become one of the most successful operations in the territory. Ayanna's reputation as a horse trainer drew clients from as far away as San Francisco. While Silas's cattle consistently brought top prices at market, their partnership with Randolph Whitlock had made them wealthy. But more importantly, it had helped change attitudes throughout the region. The real transformation came in the form of their children. Little Thomas Lightfoot Cordwain was 3 years old, with his father's gray eyes and his mother's straight black hair, his younger sister. Morningstar Helena Cordwain, named for both Apache tradition and Silas's sister, was just learning to walk, but already showed signs of her mother's way with animals. Papa Thomas said one afternoon, watching his mother. Train a new Mustang. Why do some people stare at us funny? Silas, who had been teaching the boy to whittle, set down his knife carefully. At 3, Thomas was already asking the hard questions. Some people, he said slowly, aren't used to families like ours. They think everyone should look the same, act the same. But different doesn't mean wrong, son. It just means interesting. Mama says we're bridge people, Thomas offered, repeating something Ayanna had told him. What does that mean? You help other people cross from one side to the other? Like when the creek gets deep? From the mouth of babes, Silas thought. His son understood something that had taken him years to learn. That evening, as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, Ayanna rested her head against Silas's shoulder. Do you ever wonder, she asked, what would have happened if you hadn't been at that auction? Every day, he admitted. But wondering about different paths is like trying to rope the wind. This is our path, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Even when Helena visits and rearranges our entire house? He chuckled. Even then. Though I still say we need to hide the good china when she comes. Their laughter was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. Silas tensed automatically old habits from dangerous times, but relaxed when he recognized Sheriff Dawson and Judge Thornberry. Evening, folks, the judge called out. Mind if we join you for a spell? Always welcome, Ayanna replied, though. She sensed this wasn't a social call. Sheriff Dawson removed his hat, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Truth is, we came with a proposition. The territorial capital's looking for a new territorial representative, someone to speak for the interests of all the people, not just the big landowners and mining companies. Someone, Judge Thornberry added, who understands both sides of the cultural divide. Someone respected by multiple communities. Silas frowned. You're talking about politics? I'm a rancher, not a politician. You're a leader, Dawson corrected. Have been since the day you stood up to that mob. People listen to you, trust you. Both white settlers and the Apache bands that trade in our territory. Ayanna straightened with interest. What exactly are you proposing? Run for territorial representative, the judge said directly. Your husband for the office, with you, as his unofficial advisor on Native affairs. Together, you could help write laws that protect everyone's rights, not just the majority's. The idea was staggering. Cowboy married to an Apache woman, running. For a political office in 1875, it should have been impossible. The opposition would be fierce, Silas pointed out. Sure would, Dawson agreed. But you'd have more support than you think. Whitlock's already pledged his backing, along with most of the business community. The Apache leaders I've talked to are interested. They'd rather negotiate with someone they trust than fight another war. And, Judge Thornberry added with a slight smile, your sister Helena has some interesting connections back east. Apparently she's been singing your praises in certain political circles. Ayanna looked at her husband, seeing the wheels turning in his mind. What does your heart tell you? That 5 years ago, I was a broken man looking for a place to die? Now I have a family, a future, a chance to maybe help others find their own bridges across the divide. He took her hand. But only if we do this together. I won't take any position that puts you in the shadows. Then we better start writing speeches, she said with a smile that could have lit up the territory. This Apache woman has a few things to say about the future of this land. On Election Day, 6 months later, the Cordwain victory was decisive. Their campaign had traveled to every corner of the territory, speaking to miners and ranchers, Apache bands, and Mexican settlements, promising fair representation for all, as Silas was sworn into office. Ayanna stood beside him wearing a dress that blended Apache beadwork with fashionable Eastern styling, a perfect symbol of the bridge they had built between two worlds. Judge Thornberry, ministering the oath, smiled as he spoke the final words. And do you swear to faithfully represent all the people of this territory, regardless of race, creed, or origin? I do, Silas replied, his voice carrying across the packed courthouse in the front row. Little Thomas clapped his hands while baby Morning Star gurgled happily in Helena's arms. Behind them sat Randolph Whitlock, Sheriff Dawson, and dozens of others whose lives had been touched by this unlikely love story. They had laughed at the price of the Wounded Apache Woman on that long-ago auction day. They had mocked the cowboy foolish enough to pay it. But Silas, Cordwain, and Ayanna Nightwind had the last laugh, and it echoed across the territory for generations to come, in the form of laws that protected the innocent, bridges that connected, divided communities, children who grew up knowing that love could indeed conquer all. Their marriage had begun with an act of defiance. It became a legacy of hope,